I am too. I'm looking forward to it. I was just telling the Lord what a blessing it is to be able to do this every day. Really,
Yeah, it is.
I said, okay, so I'm going to
It
let
is.
you, Marnie, and Maria. I've got to let you all
Yes.
go so we can go on and get with this,
Okay.
get with the program here. Sending you much love. Okay, so
Have,
we are.
have a great
Oh,
show.
thank you so much. All right, everybody. So,
Okay.
of course, we're talking about the George uh, George Floyd murder trial. Actually, Derek Chauvin is on trial. We're going to be talking about that today. And it was quite the day yesterday, Pastor Johnson, listening to
Yeah.
all of these young people, and I expect there to be mounted a quite a spirited defense because they're going to go toward the medical, and all they need is one person on that jury. They just need one. They just need one. That's all they need. And we got a call yesterday letting us know just that all it, only a look just takes one.
Mm.
Only a look. Well, it just takes one person. And there are some people who do blame this man for some of
For
the
his
challenges
own
he had.
death. His
Yeah,
own.
yeah.
1 minute.
Doesn't it happen all the
Yes.
time? So okay, so I'm going to come right
Oh
to
yeah.
you, and you'll give us about 5 minutes, and then good, and I'll ask you a question once we get off, and then boom. So I'm going right to it because we're on, and we do morning drive in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So
Yes.
and so let me say hello to you, Samantha and Lorraine and Twyla and Adrian and Paula. Hey. Chapearl and Marnie and Meddy and Hannah and Vandelay down there in Brazil. I pray that you're doing well. I hope that you and your family are safe, Vandelay. Let us keep us apprised of what's going on with COVID and politically, because I'm hoping that Lula will get back in. I pray. My father went down there to campaign for him the first time that he ran. Daryl Punti, Makiba, how you doing, sweetie? I love you all. Please like and share, and please go and like and subscribe on the
Here we
Santita
go.
Jackson
5 seconds.
Show.
Is the nights I stayed up apologizing and apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more and not physically interacting and not saving his life. But it's like, it's not what I should have done. It's what he should have done.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody, I'm Santita Jackson. That was the voice of Darnella Frazier, the young lady who took the iconic footage that let the world know what had happened to George Floyd, 17 years of age at the time, just a junior in high school. She's a senior now. But how courageous she has been. And it has taken a tremendous toll upon her and her community, as we could see witness after witness from 9 to, I guess, late 20s, early 30s. Their community has been devastated by this. Black, white, brown, yellow, and red. People have been devastated. So we have to think about that today. The impact that those who use this kind of forceful, deadly power, how it impacts the community, how it impacts people. Let's talk about that today on the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and WCBT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. AM 950 Radio is the voice of progressive Minnesota. But we are not just it's progressive. And all people, whatever your political affiliation, we need to make progress. We need to move forward. And we need to talk about George Floyd today. We need to talk about Derek Chauvin and what he did and what his fellow officers did to intimidate those people. And EMT, who sworn in her own heart to save the lives of people, she couldn't do it. As they patted the mace, as they intimated, oh, that something bad would happen to them if they call the police, or or 911. Wow. We got to talk about that today, everybody, because it happens all the time. It happens all the time. Call me or text me at 773 WCPT, 773 GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text, or you can meet my morning stars over on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. I'm streaming it on Reverend Jackson's page as well, but we are also on the YouTube page, the Santita Jackson Show page. Everybody, please go over there and like and subscribe. I need to get those numbers up, and you all have been helping us, and I thank you so much for that. But we want to hear your voices, and we want you to interact with us online. We're streaming on WCPT820.com and AM950radio.com. We want to hear from you today. Want to hear what you thought about what you heard yesterday. What did you think? What did you think, everybody? Let's get to some of these headlines before we get to some of the good news and get our latest COVID-19 update. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 43 degrees, 43 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 36 degrees, partly cloudy. The Dow closed down 104 points yesterday. The Nasdaq closed down 14 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 12. Well, yesterday, the top story in the news was the Derek Chauvin trial. What happened? Darnella Frazier, who was 17 at the time, who filmed the George Floyd video, apologized for not doing more. You heard her at the open of the show. She said, when I look at George Floyd, I look at my dad, my brother, my uncle, because they are all black. I look at that and I look at how that could be one of them. There have been nights I stayed up apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more, not physically interacting and doing more. And then she went on to say, but then it came to me. This was about what Derek Chauvin did. I want to know what you think, everybody. And then, of course, the off-duty firefighter who got testy with the whole court. And indeed, Genevieve Hansen was reprimanded by the judge for being combative with Derek Chauvin's lawyer. Boy, it's a whole lot. And so I want to know what you're thinking today, about all of that. And Republicans in key electoral states like Arizona, Texas, and Michigan and Florida are moving forward with restrictive voting bills despite a national outcry against it. And guess what? Now some of the top black executives in corporate America, among the few who head up Fortune 500 companies, like Kenneth Chenault, the former chief executive at American Express, and the current CEO at Merck, Kenneth Frazier. They are calling on corporations to fight the restrictive voting laws. We're going to be talking in coming days about perhaps a boycott. Should professional sports games, should the All-Star games be played in Atlanta? What about this new Hollywood? What should happen in Georgia? Should they be able to benefit while they deny most of the people who live in that state the opportunity to vote? Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Experts are warning that a failure to rapidly vaccinate the world creates dangerous openings for COVID-19 mutations. Epidemiologists from dozens of countries around the world issued a loud warning yesterday that failure to ensure global administration of the COVID-19 vaccines within the next year at the very latest could allow vaccine-resistant variants to spread among unprotected populations to such an extent that the current shots are rendered ineffective. Wow. Now, history was made yesterday. We saw President Biden put forth a progressive slate of judicial nominees. Indeed, 10 are for lifetime positions. And what's exciting is that there are 11 women. Nine of the 11 nominees are women. 9 women. And 3 of them are black women. And one is rumored to be fast-tracked for the Supreme Court, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. She is a former public defender. So we will see how all of this plays out, but that was certainly welcome news yesterday. This announcement from the Biden administration, and 20 Democrats, including, and Senator Bernie Sanders, is urging a recurring stimulus payment for everybody in President Biden's Build Back Better plan. 21 members of the Senate Democratic Caucus, even though Senator Sanders is an independent, he caucuses with the Democrats. They called upon President Biden to give people recurring direct payments, and other benefits in the jobs and infrastructure proposal for the duration of the coronavirus pandemic. In the senator's letter, they said this: polling shows that 65% of Americans support recurring cash payments for the duration of the pandemic. And this includes 54% of Republicans and 60% of independents. Wow. So think about that, everybody. And Bernie Sanders and Democrats are aiming to lower the Medicare eligibility age in the recovery package. Wouldn't that be something? Think about all that it cost you to recover from COVID, not to mention cancer and all these other diseases that are still out here, everybody. And centrist Democrats are being panned for demanding a revival of the major tax breaks for the rich. That's right, the blue dog Democrats and just the conservative Democrats. They're a small but potentially influential group of House Democrats. This is coming from Common Dreams. They threaten to oppose an emerging climate and infrastructure package if it does not restore a tax deduction that overwhelmingly benefits the richest households in the country. And now we have our final four, everybody. For those of you sports fans who are looking at the March Madness, UCLA held off Michigan in the final seconds to get to the Final Four. They had an upset win over number one seed Michigan. Wow, what did you think about that? Stanford came back to beat Louisville 78-63, and Gonzaga dominated. They're beating everybody by at least 16 points, everybody. And so, hey, what do you think about that? What do you think? Hey, did you fill out those brackets? I never do, but it's really exciting to watch, certainly, as we get down to the final four. Reverend Vicki Johnson. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, we need some good news today, because I have to tell you, I had a heartbreak yesterday as I watched that Derek Chauvin trial. Of course, she's the pastor of the St. Thomas Lutheran Church here in Chicago, and has been a civil rights activist all of her life. Talk to us today. Give us some good news.
Well, good morning. It's so good to be here with you. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech to some high school students on October 26, 1967, nearly 6 months before he was assassinated. He opened the speech by raising a very poignant question. He asked, "What is your life's blueprint? What is your life's blueprint?" Before a building is constructed, you get an architect to draw a blueprint. I was fortunate recently to have my kitchen and bathrooms remodeled, and before the contractor would even begin the project, he wanted to see the blueprint. We are all in the process of building the structure of our lives. So my question for you today is, do you have an architect? Or are you kind of playing it by ear? Psalm 127:1 says, "Except the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain that build it." If you don't have a blueprint, it's not too late to get one. Dr. King was talking to high school students who were in the beginning of their planning of their lives, but some of us may be more advanced. It's not too late to get a blueprint. And if you do have one, I think the best place to put that blueprint is in the hands of God. And then go on and do what Dr. King told those high school students as he concluded his time with them. He said to them, "Whatever you are doing with your life, whatever," and he's saying to us today, whatever we are doing with our lives, we still have the opportunity to be the best of whatever we are. And to me, that's good news.
Amen. Thank you for that.
Amen.
I need that today, because my father says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That's right. That's right.
Yes,
Man, you do
yes.
need a blueprint, and the professionals don't start without it. People who
Oh,
intend to
no.
finish the job, they don't start without the blueprint. Let me ask you this before you go,
That's
because
right.
I want everyone to call me at 773-763 WCPT, 773-763. Oh boy, 9278. Tell me, what do you make of this? Just very quickly, what do you make of all of these young people who testified yesterday in the Derek Chauvin trial? And or Derek Chauvin, I think that's how you actually pronounce his name. It sounds like the whole community were traumatized. I mean, from Donald Williams trying to hold his emotions in check to this bewildered 9-year old, to this still crying 18-year old, to the EMT Genevieve Hansen, who's still weeping, who's still weeping. It seems like the whole neighborhood, that the community have been traumatized.
The whole community has been traumatized. We PTSD is not unnormal for the Black community, and especially for our youth. Um, they should never have had that experience, and now they have to relive it in this trial. They relive it every time they see the video, every time they see a picture of George Floyd, and have a sense of responsibility for it. As a matter of fact, now the blueprint of their life has been drawn, and they didn't even draw it. So it is up to us as the mature that are around them to love them, to encourage them, to be very particular about how they move forward in this struggle that yet continues. I thought by now the struggle would have subsided, but it is at a boiling point, and it really angers me.
But what's amazing? People don't think part of the defense team, the Chauvin defense, is to paint the community angry. And because the community was angry, the crowd was about to become unruly. So we couldn't move the way we could have moved to save his life. And I heard a police officer on television early this morning say, no, 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 he put on his gloves. Derek Chauvin did, which meant that he was ready to go to work. And I am just trying to figure out how, and that's an intimidation tactic to tell us that we're not supposed to be angry, Pastor Johnson. To tell us that we're supposed to smile when we're not happy, to laugh when things are not funny, and to scratch when we don't itch. Uh,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
insulting.
Well, there's supposed to be a tactic um, that if you feel that things are going to get out of hand, then you call for backup. You don't take everything into your own hands. They're trained individuals, but the mentality of this man who is responsible for the death of George Floyd, and I can't even say his name because I don't think his name deserves to be spoken. That man knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. And these police officers must now be held accountable for the training that they get that they only use in certain communities and not in our own community. It must stop. It must stop.
It must stop. Blessings to you, Pastor Johnson. It must stop. And I'm so glad.
Blessings to you.
I'm so glad that with all of your experiences that you're in the church, because we need that right now. We need healing, and we need a place where we can express, where we can vent. So everybody, I want you to call me or
Yes.
text me at 773 WCPT, 773 What did you see yesterday? What are you expecting? There is still a pathway for Derek Chauvin to be acquitted. All he needs out of those 12 jurors, he just needs one person, just one, who believes that he might not have caused George Floyd's death. It could have been something in his system. It might have been a pre-existing condition, which is what they're telling us about everything these days. If you live, you have a pre-existing condition. But I promise you, standing on someone's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds will kill you. Maine, what is on your mind today?
Yeah, how you doing?
How are you?
What I'm okay. What I feel he was doing was setting an example. You know, like back in the day, he was playing his overseer role. Just like they would tie you to the whipping post, the biggest and the baddest, and just to show the others. And look how it did traumatize him. Listen to like you were saying, how these young people are speaking and talking. They were traumatized. He did exactly what he wanted to do: traumatize the neighborhood, to tell them this can happen to you. If it's happening to him, I'm showing you that it can happen to you too. And he got his message across.
And what was that message, do you think?
Step out of line, and this will happen to you. And I understand that they are in a red line district, like the red lining we have here in Chicago. So it must be police pretty sharp. But I just threw that in because redlining is no good neither. But for him to sit on his neck and to show everybody, to make sure that everybody seen him do this, was that old overseer slave thing that was been perpetrated since the days of slavery, and it was just repeated for all of us to see.
You know what, Maine? Before you go, what was also interesting was even though Minneapolis is the fourth worst place in the United States for Black people to live, and this is according to studies that have been done, uh, you had a mixed crowd. You had Black and white who were there, who decided to pull out their cameras and film. And to see Genevieve Hanson, the EMT, who was so you could see her anger was well, you could feel it, you could see it. And in fact, she went back and forth with the defense lawyer and was reprimanded by the judge. She was reprimanded by the court for, I guess, being so feisty and for being so angry. No one called her angry, but she certainly was that, and she was deeply, deeply hurt.
Yeah.
Are you? I mean, I'm saying I think that there are some people. I think we are maturing. There's some people who just felt that this was wrong. Wrong.
Correct.
I don't
Yeah.
care what their
Right. Well,
I don't care what their backgrounds were, because this woman was out walking. She said, I have 48-hour shifts. I'm on 48 hours, I'm off 48 hours. And so I was taking a walk to clear my head, and I saw all these cars. I thought maybe some of my colleagues are there. And then as I began to really take it went as it came upon me, what was happening, I said, wait a minute. And she was shouting, let me take his pulse. Let me help you. You, you're killing him. Wow. What do you make of that?
well, like I said, this is what he wanted to do. I wasn't. I'm not able to see the court TV because I don't have cable or anything like that. So I'm getting all my news is like second and third hand from you and news. After it's over. But to me, like I said, he did what he wanted to do. He wanted to put fear in the community, and the best way to put fear is to make an example. And he made an example out of Floyd. This is what he was doing. I'm going to make an example out of this and then for fear to put fear in the rest of the community. And this has been going on since the days of slavery.
Well, you know what? The unintended consequences. What man does for
One
evil,
minute.
God can turn it around and make it for good. Something else
Yeah,
happened.
this is true. It's written.
Something else has happened because people don't feel good about this. So I want to know how you're feeling about this. What
No,
you
and
thinking? Yes, sir. I've got 30
What?
seconds.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. That's a good thing too. That the people are coming up and they're approaching this in a different way. And that's good too. You know, it's not the riots and this and that, but we going to the courts and we going uh, to take this, like I said, in a different
Well, you
direction.
know,
And to
I
me,
would
that's
remind
good.
you as we go to this break, Maine, and thank you so much, sir, for calling.
Yeah.
Remember, Dr. King did tell us that riots are the language of the unheard. So let's be clear on that too. We have to be very, very clear on where this is going. I'm Santita Jackson, AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and WCPT 820 in Chicago. Call me, text me, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about the Derek Chauvin case and what you think about what you heard or saw yesterday. Hey, Daryl from Columbus, Ohio. You know, Facebook cuts people off. I hate that they do that. So, I mean, if I don't get to it in plenty of time, I lose everything. And Vandelay down there in Brazil, sending you much love and many blessings. Makiba, and so I said Samantha and Lorraine and Twyla from the beautiful state of Alabama. Where are you in Alabama, Twyla? And let your friends know about the show. We are real excited to hear from you today. Adrian, Paula, hey, girl, and Chapearl and Hannah and Evangeline down there in Brazil, Makiba, Francis, and Hannah, and Keith Fluid up there in New York. He's my sweet, my buddy out in New York. Barbara Bacon from Oak Park holding it down. And good morning. You know what? I'll reach out to Dr. Boyle. I will do that. I will do that. I will. And a lot of people are looking at, he is a lawyer, just so that you know. And he, sometimes he can be very difficult to get because people from all over the world try to get Dr. Francis Boyle, and they do get him on their shows. And he, of course, he also carries a significant academic load. He taught my brother in law school. That's right, my brother Jesse, Congressman Jackson, went to the University of Illinois down in Champaign. Vicky, how you doing? And Yolanda, and Kenneth, and Shirley from Philadelphia. Girl, you crack me up with that. I love it. And Brian Martin and Brian House and Pastor Hatch. I hope you call in this morning, Pastor Hatch. Please do that. I want to get your thoughts. Call me now, please, at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Joyce, Medi, and Carmelita, how you doing? You got your first vaccine? Awaiting your second shot. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well. Renee, and who do I have here with me? Who do I have? Dwight, Robert.
You have Attorney Patillo and Attorney Hoffler so far.
Okay, Attorney Hoffler and Attorney Patillo. How are you this morning? Attorney Hoffler, let me hear
Good
your voice.
morning.
Good morning, Attorney
Hello.
Patillo.
Good morning.
Wonderful. And I think we're going to have Dwight, yes? Yes, we are. Okay, wow. Yesterday was powerful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was a lot. It was a lot. Did you see the New York Times article, CK, where Kenneth Chenault and, the head of Merck, I think it's Mr. Fritz.
Oh, yeah, the brother who's here.
Yeah.
Fraser?
That's right.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That big interview that he did last year where he said that the vaccine was not going to be a silver bullet, and he got into all kinds of trouble about that. He was interviewed by my cousin by marriage. She is a she is a professor.
And we have Dwight McKee now.
Thank you, up at Harvard. And so and he moved into therapeutics, and they have a therapeutic that is to COVID-19 what Tamiflu is to the flu. But they're only in the second phase of the trials, and they're having tremendous success. Remember, they said the vaccines that we're seeing, because these really are medicines, and I think that's part of the reason we've got. I'm just speculating, everybody, but when I look at this massive spread of COVID-19, Many people think that once you get this shot or these shots, that you're free and clear. No, this actually helps to
No.
treat COVID 19 if you get it. It doesn't stop you from getting it, it doesn't stop you from spreading it, but it can save your life if you do get it. Okay? I don't think they're
You're talking
explaining
about the
that.
shot. The
Yes.
shot.
Yeah, I don't think they're
Yeah,
explaining that.
they're not.
They're not. And so
They're not.
because when you hear vaccine, you hear I'm inoculated. So when I go, you and I have gone to Africa multiple times, CK. We
Mm-hmm.
take those, we
Mm-hmm.
take vaccines because you don't want malaria, et cetera, et al. And you
Coming
don't
back
get it.
now.
So, Dwight, could I hear you really quickly?
It's been nights. I
Stop.
stayed up apologizing and apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more and not physically interacting and not saving his life. But it's like, it's not what I should have done. It's what he should have done.
Wow.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Wow. Darnella Frazier, the young lady, 20s, and she was only 17. Junior in high school. She was walking with her young cousin to Cup Foods to get some snacks for this baby. And we heard her voice yesterday, the 9-year-old. And we're mentioning Darnella Frazier's name because even though she's 18, to me, she's still not, a full adult. And she deserves the protection that all children get, that I know that I got when I was 18. But she just gave an interview in which she, disclosed her identity. And so I feel comfortable doing that. But hearing her voice yesterday, hearing her say that when I saw this man, I saw my father, I saw my brother, I saw all the men that I knew. And I'm still talking to George Floyd today, just saying, hey, wait a minute, I wish I could have done more for you. It breaks your heart. And every person that you heard yesterday, everybody, you could hear the collective trauma of that community, black and white, everyone in it, red, yellow, and brown, all around the world. We've been traumatized by that. So I want to know what you're thinking, what you're seeing. How did you react to what we saw yesterday? Maine just made the brilliant point that these scare tactics by these forces are used to keep people in line, and we have to be careful because people are not feeling that today. So I've got attorney C.K. Hoffler. She hosts her own show on WAOK, and of course, every Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time, Law and Legal with C.K. Hoffler. You don't want to miss that. She's the chair of Rainbow Push. She's the president of the National Bar Association, which is the oldest and largest black bar association in the world, more than 65,000 lawyers. Attorney Robert Patillo, who also has a show every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time on WAOK. They got all the great people at WAOK. He's the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push based in Atlanta. And Dwight McKee's noted social scientist with the National Action Network. He's also one of the founders of Operation Push. Good morning, all. Let me get right to you. Uh, Let me start with you, CK. What did we see yesterday?
Well, yesterday we saw more evidence of the of what I would call police brutality and the murder. I mean, I think we these are very, for me, and I'm sure for most of America, these proceedings are very, very difficult to listen to, very difficult to watch, because while we saw 8 minutes and 46 seconds, 8 minutes and 46 seconds became 9 minutes and 29 seconds, became people begging Chauvin to stop doing what he was doing, became a 17-year-old child traumatized by what she was seeing and feeling the need to film this, became the dispatch people wondering why it was taking so long, became, and more and more and more evidence is unfolding, making it abundantly clear that Chauvin was out of control. Not that George Floyd was out of control, but he was out of control. And so I think that
I'm breathing heavily because while this evidence is strong evidence, and actually is evidence that would, I believe, support a conviction, I think we really have to. And a lot of people are feeling, well, of course there's going to be a conviction. We have to wait till the defense presents its case.
Robert,
So
well, I just because I'm still seeing articles that are saying what you and Robert told us at the top, at the beginning of, as we were watching the jury in panels. You said you got to be careful now. Number one, you only need one dissenter, one juror who says it's not murder. This is not murder. You only need one to let this man go free. Let me go to you, Robert Patillo. What did you see yesterday?
Well, I think what we saw was a prosecution that was very, very well prepared. You saw witnesses that were speaking their truth. You saw what many of us saw and knew when the videos were released last year. That everything indicates there was an intent on the part of Chauvin to kill Mr. Floyd. Because remember, one of the aspects of malice murder or first degree murder, you have to show is intent. Intent not being this Dexter sort of Silence of the Lamb plotting, as many people think. Intent can be formed in a second. So as long as it becomes your conscious object to remove to take the life of another individual, that will vitiate a charge of first degree murder or conviction on those lines. But as I tell everybody, you never judge a case halfway through. You never look at opening statements. You never look at one side because, of course, one side is going to be compelling because you're only hearing one side of the story. Just as with all others, these offenses are still going to have their bite at the apple. And similar to as we saw with the Trump impeachment trial, part 1 and 2, that no matter what evidence you present, if you have a recalcitrant jury, it's nearly impossible to get a conviction. Just as we saw President Trump in the Senate. I think after all of us saw the video presentation of the storming of the Capitol, the House manager's presentation, we said, "Oh yeah, he has to get out of here." But it depends on what the jury says. So we have to take all this with a grain of salt. But more importantly, these things are being recorded for history. This is why it is so crucial that we get these cases to trial, and why we demand to at least stand trial on them. Because regardless of how the jury comes out, history will put down. Our public policy officials will be able to put down. When we're drafting new legislation to draft new laws, we will have these effects on record, so we understand that what exactly happened going forward. So it's very important information for history, but also very important information for how the jury makes their ultimate decision.
Dwight McKee, what did you see?
Well, one thing I would disagree with Attorney Hoffman on is I don't think that he was out of control. I think the police was very much in control. I think what we witnessed was a controlled execution. I think that what we saw is the history of a relationship between power and viciousness and hate, and those who don't have that kind of power, who are victims of that kind of hate. I think what we saw was Jesus put on the cross. Dred Scott having no laws that white men have to respect. Tulsa been burned down. I thought we saw the sum total of pretty much of what we've gone through in these last 400 or 500 years as victims of this state. I think we saw a controlled execution.
You know what's curious to me? Attorneys Hoffler and Patillo and Dwight, before I bring on these callers, they worked in the same place, George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. And Derek Chauvin was outside. Many police officers perform security functions at private facilities. And George Floyd was inside. And he was also somebody who was very popular with the Timberwolves. up in Minneapolis. He was someone who played basketball himself. His best friend was a professional basketball player. When basketball players came to town, the professionals, they knew that he was going to be hanging out with them. All of that, and no one's talking about. Yeah, and you have the owner of the club where they worked who said that Chauvin was an aggressive guy. He was very, very aggressive, brutal even. No one is, I'm not, well, I know we're early on, but I'd like to know more about their relationship. Early on, the press reports were that they didn't see each other. I just doubt that they knew, somebody knew something, CK, before I go to these calls. Somebody knew something. Something about this just doesn't
I,
feel right.
uh, uh, it doesn't feel right, but this is the thing. The person who could speak truthfully to it is dead, and that would be George Floyd. So who we have is the killer speaking or not speaking to it, and it's definitely, he's not going to testify, and it's definitely not in his best interest to talk about any ill will, bad feelings, or relationship that may have existed. There's no way that anyone, if George Floyd were the big dominant black man and all the stuff that they said he is, then there's no question that Chauvin knew him. And there's no question in my mind that he probably felt some kind of way about him. So when he was putting him in check, making sure that he understood he was the man, he was the boss, he was in charge, in that 9 minutes and 29 seconds, I believe, in terms of his mindset, and this is certainly something I would argue in closing, that he was making a point. How does it feel now? You thought you were the man, you think you're the man, you walk around like a peacock. How does it feel now?
I had that feeling.
So I think that's a factor.
No, really, no. I have absolutely felt that's a factor, but no one has pursued that, Attorney Patillo, thus far.
Well, I think that there's still they're trying to focus in on these more certain and more less speculative aspects, because one of the real things that people have to understand is that in any trial, you don't want to ask any questions that you don't know the answer to already. You don't want to leave any holes. You don't want to leave any speculation. You don't want to leave anything that the defense can latch on to and change the case from your core case to something that that they want to talk about. So I think this is why they're sticking to the things where they have clear witnesses for, where they have clear video evidence, where they have clear documentary evidence on, as opposed to speculating on what their previous relationship was, because those are things that they may not have direct witness testimony to address.
Dwight McKee, you want to weigh in before we go to the phone? Yes, CK? No, CK, go on.
I was just going to add, from a legal standpoint, there might be witnesses that they know that could testify to that, but those witnesses will bring in other information that's not good for their case. So sometimes you make strategic calls about witnesses. You get a valuable piece of information, but then they mess up. They could help unravel certain other aspects of your case. So primacy is key. When you're putting on a case, any case, you want to go with your best witnesses, your best evidence and everything first. Because in closing, he can argue that. In closing, you can argue whatever you want to argue. You can talk about circumstantial evidence. You can talk about direct evidence. You can put it all together and put the picture together for the jury. But for now, in laying the evidence and meeting the elements that he's got to meet to be able to get a conviction, just the elements, the legal elements, to get a conviction for whether it's first degree, second degree, or third degree murder, that's what they're doing now. And you go with your best witnesses, because jurors, like everybody else, at some point they're not going to be as tuned in as they are now. It's sensational, it's interesting and all that now. But if it goes on next week, they're not going to be as tuned in, and they'll probably perk up a little bit when the defense presents its case. So I think these are strategic questions, but possibly in closing argument, Santita, that can be argued. As where you're telling the jury, imagine this, like things like we're saying now. They're saying now, how? Of course, Chauvin knew who George Floyd was. They worked in a 200 or 300, I'm just making, these are not the little facts, 300 square foot building 3 times a week. They saw each other all the time. George Floyd, you heard, was described as someone who was affable, everybody loved, blah, 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 blah. Chauvin was described as someone who was aggressive, and people were afraid of him. Of course, Derek Chauvin knew who George Floyd was, and of course, Derek Chauvin more than likely felt some kind of way about George Floyd. Maybe didn't like George Floyd, didn't do this and that. So when he encountered him on that day, he wanted to prove a point. So you can argue that because there's not going to be anyone, and definitely not Chauvin's not going to testify, that's going to say, and it would be hearsay, Chauvin was trying to prove a point. He hated George, unless there is that testimony that someone, because then there would be admissions against interest, that meaning they would come in as an exception to hearsay, would come in as evidence because Chauvin said directly to someone, I hate that George Floyd. I want to nail him. I want to get him. I want to kill him. Well, that might be in Perry Mason, but in real life you don't have that. But I believe in closing, based on how the evidence will lay, maybe he can make that argument.
You know what?
And maybe there's enough evidence to be able to make it.
Well, we'll see. Dwight, I'm going to go to a mutual friend. Reverend Marshall Hatch called in. Reverend Hatch, how are you, Pastor Hatch?
I am great. How you doing, Santita?
Good, good. What do you just tell me your thoughts about what you've seen thus far? And I'm looking at also the collective trauma that it appears that community has withstood. Everybody who testified yesterday sounded as if they had witnessed a murder. Wow.
Well, my son and I spent Monday in Minneapolis. Took off and took some time, went up to that community and walked it and talked to people. It is simply a neighborhood, and it is more diverse than we would have thought. So that the people that we saw standing on that street that day were really representative of a neighborhood that's been gentrifying and that is very diverse and that is in every way traumatized, really just simple people. What my son and I experienced, it was as if we were standing on holy ground. We were in a place that, apparently, it's a divine poetry being played out that God has used in this Holy Week. It's clearly evident that, the whole world is turning around. I mean, we can be focused on the minutia of, did they know each other? I think that what is clear is that his life did not matter. To Chauvin, it didn't matter to the police. That this was something that was done fairly regularly and is done fairly regularly, where Black life is snuffed out and devalued. Except this time the whole world saw it, and saw it in the holy season last year, and now the trial is being played out this year. I think filmmaker Ava Renee said something very profound that we witnessed because of pandemic, because of sheltering in place, because this 17-year-old courageously performed an act of civic service. We witnessed the murder and the murdered in the same film frame in real time. And it was grotesque. It was, as Dr. McKee said, it was a crucifixion that was very public, that the planet witnessed, and it has profoundly affected all of us. And so now we're hearing from eyewitnesses, from minors, from children, from a community that is very diverse, that has deracialized what we, the way we have to respond to this, because it was obviously an assault against all of our humanity. And so the world is watching this incident, what happened in that neighborhood that day, that just happened to have been filmed by the grace of God. The countless encounters of African Americans with the police that have not been filmed. This has clearly given us a glimpse into suffering that we can't even calculate that's been happening. And America is on trial. This is bigger than that incident.
I was sharing with a friend the other day that to watch the new American Secretary of State and his colleagues with their counterparts in China, and all you could hear coming out of the Chinese mouths when they brought up Hong Kong and Chinese human rights, the Chinese counterparts kept raising Black Lives Matter. What about that? And so I think that we're at a real inflection point. This trial is going to tell us a lot about uh, the direction that we're going to go in as a nation, as we're at a crossroads where we're still trying to settle a question. I mean, a civil war that has already commenced. Will we have two conflicting visions of the future? Will we be a multiracial democracy with freedom and justice and all of the ideals being manifest, or will we turn into some kind of degenerative, balkanized South African apartheid? Restrictions on the right to vote to allow minorities to reign for another generation. So that all of that I think is being played out, and it's interesting theologically. It comes right out of a small neighborhood.
Absolutely. I mean, but it seems to me that we're back to front, Dwight. These are the same questions that we were trying to resolve before 1619. I mean, the big fight in the United States has always been between the oligarchs and the monarchs, or whether we were going to be loyal to the monarchy or not. There was a real debate before we settled on having this constitutional republic as to whether we were going to be a colony of the Queen or not. I mean, Dwight, where do you see this going? And coming up, we're going to have some really wonderful guests to join us to talk about their impressions. Attorney Mark Fancher, of course, and Joe Pinion. Joe Pinion is a Republican strategist, African American. Met him the other day on a television show, and I wanted us to hear from him because uh, he was devastated by just what we saw on Monday. Just seeing the 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Dwight, where do you see all of this going? I've got 2 minutes before we go to break.
Well, first, let me commend Reverend Hatch for taking his son up to moralize in his spirit that kind of history that he could develop in his Christian orientation. But secondly, to the other point we had raised, I don't think that the evidence really matters. The evidence is ever before us. The evidence is on film. You can't miss what happened yesterday. All you can do is ignore what happened yesterday. And so what you're playing now is against people's prejudice and people's fears. The people that's going to vote no or vote against conviction are people who already have their mind made up and no evidence can convince them of anything otherwise. Because in their mind, they believe that police matter more than other people. They believe that the state matters more than the average man. They have an orientation of big them, little us. And so there's no evidence that you can put on the table that will really change their minds. For the other jurors, they see what's in front of them. They've already convinced. They know what they're looking at, and they will vote to convict. The issue I'm more concerned about is what happens if there is no conviction. Is how do you explain to a Marshall Hatch's son who has been raised on a belief that nonviolent redress is the way to go, and they begin to see themselves running out of options? How do you negotiate that level of frustration? How you negotiate that level of disappointment? What can you say to a child like that when he see everything in front of him tells him that it don't matter what he does, that he's nobody and he has no recourse? That's the danger that I see in this situation is what happens to the dream deferred?
Well,
Does it
1 minute.
dry up like a raisin in the sun. Where's Lorraine Hansberry? Whoo, Everybody, let's talk about this on the Santita Jackson Show. And I want you to call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278 as we figure out where we're going from here. Because we're hearing, as Attorney Robert Patillo told us, we're hearing one side, but believe me,
30.
there is another side that is going to be presented, and it's going to be presented right soon. And George Floyd will be on trial, and it won't be pretty. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278, WCPT 820 Chicago, AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I am Santita Jackson. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Reverend Hatch, thank you so much for being with us today. That was brilliant, brilliant interpretation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.
Let me ask you this: would you have any time on at night between 9 and 11 on Friday?
Always make time for Santita Jackson.
Well, actually, this is for Reverend Jackson. I produce his radio
Always
show.
make time for Reverend. He just tells me what to do, and I do it. So there's no discussion.
I harbor no illusions. I'm not Reverend, so I can ask. I don't have that kind of space. So that's all, and that's all right with me. I have not earned that. That having been said, I'm going to call you because we're going to talk with Dr. Aubrey Hendricks about the politics of Jesus and the real meaning of Easter.
Absolutely.
Particularly at this time,
yeah,
it would fit in perfectly. Okay. So
glad to do it.
We'll call you just before. Okay.
On Friday, 9/11.
Yes, and I'll call you just before 9.
Great.
Okay.
Looking forward.
It'll be just
Dr.
before.
Hatch, thank you for your contribution.
Always.
Dr. Hatch, thank you for your contribution. Thank you, Dr. McKee. Always learn from you, learn from the best.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay. Let me see. Sorry, I'm just doing a couple of things at once. Friday, April 2nd, 2021. There we go. How about that? Oh, okay. Paul, let me know when I have who we have up. We have, okay. Okay. All right. Okay, this ought to be interesting. So, Paul, let me know when we have our guest up.
Yes, we have Attorney Fancher and Joseph Pinion right now.
Please let me say hello to them both. Joseph Pinion?
Hello. Good morning.
It's great hearing your voice. He's holding it up for the Republicans. He's really a progressive Republican, a progressive conservative, and I'm so glad that he's with us. We had a wonderful time on Metro Focus out of New York, a PBS show that they have there, and I was most impressed with him. And this has been very difficult to watch. So please don't weep through this segment, through the show, Joseph.
Oh my goodness! There's some days, man. There's some days in news. It's just, oh man.
No, this is a lot. But I want to, and I'm bringing on Attorney Mark Fancher. Attorney Mark Fancher from the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Attorney Fancher, how you doing? And you all are joining. Oh, love you in this holy week. And of course, we've got Attorney C.K. Hoffler. She is the president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world. She's chair of Rainbow Push. She also has her own radio show on WAOK. I have to say it as many times as I can because we want her to have as many listeners as possible. Law and Legal with CK every Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And Robert Patillo has a show on WAOK as well. Every Sunday from 1 to 4. He's the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. And you're on Newsmax, Joe. When can we catch you?
Every Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So trying to bring you the weekly comings and goings of the news, whatever that means these days.
Well, it means a lot. It means a lot. I really appreciate And I will state the obvious here. Whether we agree politically or not, one of the things that I've learned from Reverend is that we all have skin in the game, and we're all trying to get to the right place. I believe that. And just so that you know Armstrong Williams. I know you know him well. All of us here know him. But I knew Armstrong for a long time because he was head of the Young Black Republicans for Jesse Jackson in '84 and '88.
Correct.
And so, you know, we've known each other, and we have lovingly disagreed and lovingly come together on the things that were most important. And I think that this is something that is very, very, very important. And I thank you for agreeing to be with us today. And I hope this will not be your last time.
Absolutely going to make this a routine. Hopefully.
I know. Oh, look. Trust me. Even when you disagree, we're all good here. Okay. So trust me. So and Robert, do you know Robert Patillo? Robert, are you still there, hon?
Yes, ma'am. Me and James have been on panels plenty of times over on Fox. Yeah, we've talked to each other for years.
Okay. Because I was about to say, this sounds good. Robert is an interesting mix. I love him. I love y'all. I love everybody today. Happy Holy Week, everybody. So thank you so much. We're going to be getting your impressions about what happened, what you saw yesterday, and what you expect. Dwight continues to take us to where we might be should there be an acquittal. You only need one person, Joe, and Mark Fancher, Attorney Fancher.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we spoke about this. I mean, it's really, to me, telling that somehow, in the light of the evidence, in the light of the video, that there is realistically doubt in the minds of many Americans, and certainly optimism in the minds of the attorneys.
1 minute.
Derek Chauvin, that there is a possibility that one of those jurors will look at that and say, you know what, there's not enough here to convict on any of the counts that he's facing.
Say your best stuff. We're gonna be on the radio. We're on Facebook Live now, but trust and believe. I want you to say all that. Yeah, because I got one of those. I got one of those calls yesterday, and I got a lot of direct messages yesterday.
Yep.
About people who said that. I said,
30.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's another school of thought out here, everybody. So stand by. We're coming up.
$15. $5.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Santita Jackson, WCPT 820. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820 in Chicago and AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and all around the country, all around the world. I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Please meet Blu-ray and Raphael and Vanderlei from Brazil and Shirley from Philadelphia and Barbara and Marnie and Maddie and Chapearl and Vanessa McNorton, my soror. We were in school from K through 16. Love you, girl. Love you, love you, love you. So many of you, Sheila. We want to talk about this George Floyd case today. So let's get to some of these headlines. And I want you to cue up a few of these sound bites for me, Paul, before we get back. We'll be back in just a hot second. But let me get to these headlines. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 43 degrees today, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 36 degrees will be your high, partly cloudy. The Dow closed down 104 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 14 points. And the S&P 500 closed down 12 points. Well, we had day 2 of the Derek Chauvin trial. I want to hear from you at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Darnella Frazier, 17 years of age at the time, walking with her 9-year-old cousin. Oh, she said, she's apologizing to George Floyd to this day, having wished that she could have done more. And we saw this compelling testimony. We continue to see different vantage points of the death of George Floyd. I want to know what you're thinking about what you're seeing and what the possibilities are for acquittal, what the possibilities are for conviction. They only need one. They only need one, everybody. So let's talk about that today on the Santita Jackson Show. Black executives are calling on corporations to fight the newly instituted restrictive voting laws in Georgia, led by Kenneth Chenault, the first African American chief of American Express, and Kenneth Frazier, the chief executive of Merck. They are pushing corporate America to fight back against these restrictive laws. Mr. Chenault said there is no middle ground here. You are either for more people voting or you want to suppress the vote. The executives did not criticize specific companies, but instead called on all of corporate America to publicly and directly oppose new laws that will restrict the rights of black votes and to use their clout, money, and lobbyists to sway the debate with lawmakers. That is from the New York Times, everyone. Experts are warning that we need to rapidly vaccinate the world, lest dangerous mutations multiply, everybody. What do you think about that? Why are we getting more and more infections as more and more people are getting these shots? Got to talk about that. We'll be doing that in the coming days. Great first step. Progressives are welcoming President Biden's slate of judicial nominees. Out of the 11, 9 are women and 3 are African American, and one is of particular interest. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. So she has been nominated to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. That is seen to be a stepping stone to the Supreme Court. Will she get to the Supreme Court? Many people hope so. And indeed, she has an interesting background because she is not a prosecutor, but she is someone who has defended those who needed defending. 20 Democrats plus the independent Bernie Sanders are urging President Biden to put in his reconstruction package a recurring stimulus payment, not just a one-time $1,400 payment. They say that Americans need a bridge in this time of economic want during this pandemic. And we might get a lower Medicare eligibility age if Senator Sanders and Democrats have their way. What do you think about that? That would be a great thing. And centrist Democrats have been panned for demanding a revival of the major tax breaks for the rich that we saw instituted in the Trump administration. And now the final four, well, they are set with UCLA, Gonzaga, Stanford, and South Carolina. Wow, it's going to be a great, great conclusion to March Madness. All right, everybody, let's get right to it. Got a tremendous panel with us today. It's expanded. We're talking about the George Floyd murder, the killing. It's very interesting that we're still hearing that Derek Chauvin could be acquitted, but we have not heard his side yet. We have not heard his side yet. But what do you make of these compelling testimonies from yesterday? You know, before we begin, let us go to Darnella. I want to hear what Darnella Frazier had to say, Paul. Cue her up, please.
It's been nights. I've stayed up apologizing and apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more and not physically interacting and not saving his life. But it's like, it's not what I should have done. It's what he should have done.
Wow. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, president of the National Bar Association. She's also chair of Rainbow Push. She has her own radio show on WAOK every Tuesday at 11 Eastern Standard Time. Attorney Robert Patillo, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, civil rights lawyer, brilliant. He has his own radio show from 1 to 4 every Sunday on WAOK. And of course, social scientist, the brilliant Dwight McKee, one of the founders of Operation Push, also with the National Action Network today. Joining them, Attorney Mark Fancher, National Conference of Black Lawyers, brilliant civil libertarian and civil rights lawyer. But we have someone new to the panel, and I hope that he will join us as often as he can. Joe Pinion. Don't stop breathing, everybody. He's a Republican strategist, but I like this guy a lot. He's the chair of the Conservative Color Coalition, and he hosts every Saturday the Saturday Agenda on Newsmax. Welcome to the show, Joe Pinion and everybody. How you doing, Joe? Joseph?
Absolutely. Pleasure to join you guys.
Talk to me, Joe. You and I did a show just a few days ago, and it was, I have to tell you, it was hard for everybody to get through because we had just seen the 9 minutes and 29 seconds, not the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that we had originally heard about. We saw the knee on the neck of George Floyd for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And it was very difficult for you to get through the interview. And we just thank Jenna Flanagan for being such a brilliant host, because she was sensitive to all of us. But I was really moved by the fact that it was hard for you to get through. What was it about this that was difficult for you? And that is difficult for you now.
Well, I mean, I just think that there's so much baked into this case. I think the one thing that I really struggle with for me is this notion of people saying that we have to trust the process. We heard the family of George Floyd talking about that in the press conference they had before, saying that if the system wants Black Americans in particular to trust the system, then they have to show that they're worthy of such trust. If we can't get that done in this case, then we are really lost. In particular, because I think, as we spoke about on Monday, the only people that truly could have helped George Floyd were individuals wearing a badge. And they stood by and did nothing. In fact, from my perspective, as much as I can sit here and say with clarity and a full heart that I believe that Derek Chauvin has a malicious intent and a depraved indifference to the life of George Floyd, the anger that I have in many ways is more so for the officers who allowed him to do what he did for those 9 minutes. Because even as we listen to the testimony of Genevieve Hanson, the 28-year-old firefighter, who was told by the police that if she was really a Minneapolis fire person, she would know better than to try to get involved. And so the question, as I said before, for us becomes, if good Samaritans who are actually empowered by the city, by the institutions to get involved, are prevented from getting involved, and the police themselves who are empowered and also entrusted to police themselves will not get involved when something as egregious as this has occurred, then there's nothing left for us to do but have a society where we have lawlessness, where we have citizens who feel compelled to take the law into their own hands. And if that's the world that we've built, then it's really a sad, sad place. And so that is why, for me, the stakes for the George Floyd case are so high. Because if the system says that this is acceptable, then there's really very little left for us to do within the bounds of the law as the system is currently constructed.
Wow. Attorney Mark Fancher, what say you?
Well, the thing is that African people globally are closer to God generally, and that's why he loves them so much. And it's because, we have a basic sense of humanity. We're essentially very good. We have a real and accurate perception and understanding of justice. And the flaw that we have is that we are unable to recognize that those are not characteristics that are shared by everybody. It is really difficult for us to understand that there are communities, there are people who lack a basic sense of justice. People who will go to great lengths to construct an entire system which is designed to protect their interests and nobody else's. It's hard for us to wrap our minds around that, but that's what we have. We have a system which has been constructed precisely for the purpose of upholding the interests of white supremacy and white people. And it is designed always to work to the disadvantage and to the detriment of people of color, specifically African people and indigenous people. I mean, it was designed that way. We don't have to guess about that. We don't have to speculate about it. It's baked into the Constitution. The earliest Supreme Court decisions betrayed their intent. Johnson versus McIntosh with respect to indigenous people, and Dred Scott versus Sanford with respect to African people. This is a white nation designed for white people to protect their interests. And so when we consistently see these acquittals of white officers who have engaged in the most egregious conduct, the most outrageous conduct, we're continually shocked by that. We're continually enraged by that because we didn't receive justice. We aren't supposed to receive justice. And so we're not supposed to receive justice in connection with this case. As compelling as the testimony of those children was yesterday, as compelling as the video of George Floyd's murder is, we're not supposed to receive justice. And when by some accident we do receive justice, then the people who come to know this system is designed to keep us down lose their minds. Now, regardless of what one thinks about the guilt or innocence of O.J. Simpson, anyone who understands law understands that based on the record that was established at the trial, the outcome that was produced by a predominantly black jury was the correct one. But because it did not fit the script, then the white community in this country lost its minds. It was not supposed to go that way. Not because it was O.J. Simpson, but because O.J. Simpson, during the course of the trial, conducted himself through his attorney, Johnny Cochran, like a black man by raising race as an issue, as a defense. And so when we see the factors that are present here in this case, we can't be surprised continually by these outcomes. We can't be primed and ready to lose our minds and resort to chaotic destruction because the system, to our shock and dismay, did not function. We need to be much more analytical, much more calm and focused in devising ways and strategies that will allow us to dismantle a system which has been constructed to keep us down.
You know, Joseph Pinion, it seems to me as I'm hearing the stories and seeing the video of then Officer Chauvin grinding his knee into his neck, it seemed to be so personal. And it turns out that they worked in the same place. The initial news reports are that they did not know each other, but it seems so personal. And yet we're understanding, if news reports are to be believed, that the defense that will be mounted is they're going to zero in on George Floyd's life, on drugs that might have been in his system. He had been recovering from COVID, and of course he had a heart problem, and the heart problem is what's killed him. How do you think people will react to that?
We just have to get to the point where we stop putting the deceased on trial for things that have very little to do with why they died. To be clear, most Americans have some form of a pre-existing condition. That is why the COVID outbreak has been so pernicious on the American population. We have people dealing with obesity. We have people dealing with diabetes. We have people dealing with all manner of undiagnosed underlying comorbidities. That is, in many ways, a direct result of the fact that we have a healthcare system that has not worked quite well for vast swaths of the American people. So this notion that somehow that the death is a result of the comorbidities and not the result of a man having the fullness of his weight on the neck of another man for 9 minutes after he said he couldn't breathe, after he defecated on himself, and then still for additional minutes, still not relinquishing or letting up any of that pressure, as we said before, was insulting. And so, the thing that I wrestle with, because to me that's, as somebody who has said that we have to trust the system, as somebody who, as we've spoken about before, in that tradition of King, right, believing in the arc of the universe being long but bending towards justice, that we are a system that is in pursuit of a perfect dream but implemented by imperfect men, that we have the imprint of that imperfection on our laws because it started on our hearts. And we have to do our best to work in the tradition of Christ, to work in the tradition of King, to try to make to make this world work for us, to make this world a better place. I don't want to live in a world where we have to start asking the question, at what point is this person with a badge no longer an officer of the court and now a clear and present danger to my existence? We can't live in a world like that. But soon and very soon, if we sit here and watch an acquittal for something as disgraceful and clear and present day as what we witnessed in the murder of George Floyd, because that's what it was, as you called it, a snuff film in 2020, then that's the question that we're going to start having. When everyday citizens are walking by and saying, at what point do I need to intervene? Oh, this traffic stop doesn't look like it's going very well. I think I have a moral responsibility to intervene. You know, I sit here, I believe in the Second Amendment. We have places like Ohio, open carry states. We have places like Minneapolis where people were up in arms about what happened over the summer, where the McCluskeys were walking around their home with weapons because they felt threatened, that there was a crowd walking through the streets outside their homes. At some point, if we have gotten to the point where the system has said that what Derek Chauvin did to George Floyd is okay, then you're going to have a lot of people re-examining how you deal with such a system. And maybe this is frightening talk for a lot of people, but I say this as somebody who believes in the Constitution, who believes in the Second Amendment, who understands that implicit in the Constitution is a right to defend yourself and your life and your liberty. And if the system is saying that George Floyd was not deprived of his liberty, then we've got big trouble here in America.
Dwight McKee, what is your response?
Well, that's exactly the point I made yesterday. Is but I think what my read is just a little different than some. But I think what we were looking at yesterday, looking at in the video, was a sociopath with a badge, and the problem is the contradiction between the is and the all. Is this guy supposed to be a protector of the law? And you watch him, and without empathy and with cold indifference, snuff a man's life out. And it's hard to reconcile the inconsistency. Because that being the case, and you had 3 or 4 of his brothers with him, protecting him from any accountability about murdering somebody, I'm right where the brother is, that I talked about yesterday, is that I think there's really a Popeye syndrome where people get to a point where they say, I've had all I can stand, I can't stand no more, and freak out. And you run the risk, if there's no redress, of people, of the walls tumbling down, people burning the joint down because they see no other alternative in no other way. My hope is that it does not go that way, but my belief is that at some point, people are going to do what they know, and that's going to fight for their lives and fight to defend themselves by any means necessary.
Wow.
And I think we're right on the precipice of that.
Well, you know what? I've got about a minute. C.K. Hoffler, Attorney Hoffler, and I'm going to let you speak more at greater length on the other side of the break. Your thoughts? Because it just seems like people are on the edge, Attorney Hoffler. They're on the edge.
Well, people are on the edge. People are on the edge everywhere. It's not just in Minnesota. It's really in this country. And I believe we're all in some form experiencing some form of PTSD. And I'm not a clinician. I'm not a medical person, but I just really believe that because these are things that are shocking to the system. Every single day, there's like an assault, if you will, on human rights, on civil rights, on civil liberty, on democracy, on justice, and then just flat out on Black lives. And so when we see, I'm going to come back to what the prosecutor said, just trust your eyes. When we trust our eyes, and we know that our eyes actually, it should have been 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And if there's no justice in this, people are really going to lose their minds if there's not a conviction. And it won't just be here in the U.S.
No, it won't be.
It won't just be here in the U.S.
As we go out, Paul, I want you to play the clip as we go out of Donald Williams. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes.
Did you make a 911 call?
That
is correct. I did call the police on the police.
All right. And why did you do that?
Because I believe I witnessed a murder.
And so you felt a need to call the police?
I felt the need to call the police on the police.
Now, there were police there, right?
There were police there.
Okay, why didn't you just talk to them about it?
I believe that we just didn't have no connection. You know, I spoke to them, but not on a connection of a human being relationship.
Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Call me. Let me know what your thoughts are. 773-763-WCPT. 773-763-9278. Got a tremendous panel. Get some really fantastic feedback about what we saw yesterday, about what we might see today, and about what we're going to see going forward in this trial. So much more than Derek Chauvin is at stake here, his freedom. There's a lot going on. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. And we'll come in with the 9-year-old, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. How long is her clip?
It is about a minute long.
And Genevieve's?
Genevieve is 45 seconds.
Okay, very good. I want to call her Genevieve. I mean, CK. So what happens, your brains get a little scrambled as you get a little older. But, well, you all keep talking. We've got 2 minutes here, so I want to thank everybody for your feedback, because this is a whole lot to take in. And I think, all of these, I will say, listening to this 9-year-old child, hearing, oh my gosh, hearing Darnella, and thinking that everybody, she was walking her 9-year-old cousin to the store to get snacks. And this is the highlight of his 9-year-old's day. I'm going to the store and I'm going to get the candy, the potato chips. I'm going to get this highlight of her day. And she started pulling out her phone, because this was the first time I had seen that footage. And she told her to go into the store. She said, because I knew that this was not going to work out well, and I did not want her to see it. The fact that at 17, she had that sense. I mean, because that's Black life in America, right?
It is. Yep. It is. And she wanted to shield that child.
She wanted to shield.
And thank God she did. But I have to tell you that those children, and you could tell by Ms. Fraser's testimony, she's still a child. She's back in that moment. Are going to be marked for life. Mm-hmm. And because they played a role, and it's that guilt feeling that sometimes survivors have. I'm told of plane crashes and things like that, or really devastating events. Why me? Her guilt is, what could I have done? Should I have gone up there and jumped on his back and told him to stop? What could I have done more to save his life? The truth of the matter is, she did more to save this country. And she just doesn't see it yet, because this case, I believe, particularly if there is a just outcome, is going to go a long way in saving this country from itself. So, and I just have to be in prayer about that. There's this expression, you just got to get out of your own way sometimes, so that you can see the path, the straight path to glory. We have to get out of our own way of craziness so that we don't start second guessing what we see in front of us. There's what we see is murder. We don't see, well, let's try to work it out. Let me de-escalate. We see cold-blooded murder. And we need to start calling out what we see.
But can you do that in the courtroom? I mean, CK, Mark, Robert, can you? I mean, Joseph,
well,
I don't know.
Tell you, I do. Okay, so I do civil work. Now I do civil work. And I can tell you, in a civil case, if the evidence reflects it, you can say that in a civil case. But if it doesn't reflect it, you can't go far, because you will be sanctioned. In a civil case, let's say a wrongful death case, where a doctor's negligence caused
back in 30
of an individual.
Coming with a 9-year-old. Okay.
Will do.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry, CK.
So in a civil case, when a doctor did some negligence and caused the death of someone, You can't say, as a lawyer, that doctor,
15.
but you'll get sanctioned and probably called mistrial. That doctor murdered that person. In closing, you can't say that unless the evidence supports it. I've only had one time in my career, in 34 years, where I was able to say that.
Hold on. No, we're learning a lot. We'll all be lawyers.
Were you there when an ambulance came?
Yes.
Tell us what happened after you saw the ambulance come.
Yes. The ambulance had to push him off of him.
And how did that happen? Did they simply come in an ambulance and then go up to push him off, or what happened?
They asked him nicely to get off of him.
And when they asked him nicely to get off of him, what did he do?
He still stayed on him.
And then what happened after he still stayed on him? What did the ambulance people do?
They just had to put him off and get off of him.
Are you able to tell us, having been there on this day and seeing the officer on top of George Floyd, how did you feel about that? How did it affect you?
I was sad and kind of mad.
And tell us, why were you sad and mad?
Because it felt like he was stopping his breathing, and it's kind of like hurting him.
Thank you, Judea. I want to ask you the other question.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Holy Week, everybody. Wednesday, March 31st, 2021. And fitting that we would be talking about George Floyd. But it is Derek Chauvin who is on trial here. But George Floyd has really been on trial all year. Robert Patillo made the point that we don't know the weight, the height, really. We don't know the particulars, the dating habits, even though his wife sued him for divorce as soon as this incident occurred, this murder occurred. But we do know more and more and more about George Floyd. A Duke University student, Joseph Pinion, penned his toxicology report all over the campus. The school said, of course, they're going to discipline him, but wow. Joseph Pinion, Republican strategist, he hosts his own television show on Newsmax, Saturday Agenda. What time does it come on?
1 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. So
all right, no,
it's noon to 2 p.m. Central.
There you go. How about that? And 10 to 12 on the left coast. Attorney Mark Fancher.
Yeah,
Absolutely. National Conference of Lawyers. Attorney Mark Fancher. Attorney C.K. Hoffler. The president of the National Bar Association. Chair of Rainbow Push. She hosts her own radio show on WAOK. The iconic Black Talk radio station in Atlanta. 11 o'clock every Tuesday. Law and Legal. You don't want to miss that. You can get some great advice. Of course, Dwight McKee, social scientist, so brilliant, founder of one of Operation Push's founders, and he is now, of course, with the National Action Network. He's active with everybody, and we have got. I think we still have you. Is it Robert Patillo? Have I missed anyone? There's just so much. I'm sorry, hearing that baby's voice, CK, just kind of. Robert Patillo, it took me someplace else because that was just. I just think about her, Joseph and Robert and Dwight and Mark and CK. I think about her so excited. She is waiting for her big sister cousin to take her to Cup Foods so she can get her sneaky snacks, and this happens. And I just, Joseph, I still hear the trauma, and then you, CK. It's to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what happened is just so egregious. And I know we've said that before. And there have been so many cases. We saw the case where we had a police officer hop on the hood of a car, fire 137 bullets into a car, reloading multiple times, acquitted. We've seen things that were just wrong in America. We've seen what happened to Trayvon Martin, the Abner Louima cases. There have been so many cases. I mean, you almost have to find ways to forgive yourself for the fact that you've even forgotten the names of so many of our brothers and sisters that have lost their lives in such a callous nature. Tamir Eliza Rice being gunned down in less than 4 seconds in a child playing with a toy gun in a public park. by law enforcement in of all places, again, an open carry state. Where technically speaking, even if that was a real gun, there is a potential that he would have had a license to be having the said gun. So, John Crawford II, same thing, being shot dead in a Walmart that sells real guns, holding a toy gun in an open carry state. And you start to realize what many black people have said for a very long time, that the only thing that made him threatening was the fact that by virtue of the color of his skin, he was a member of a suspect class, right? And so we get into these conversations where the easiest deflection for the people that don't want to have these conversations is that Derek Chauvin was a lunatic with a badge. But at the same time, the people who are engaging in those conversations in spaces that are quite different than this one, and quite honestly, the spaces that I'm in quite often, will also pivot to the issues in George Floyd's life. They'll pivot to all manners of things that have very little to do with the fact that at the end of the day, he didn't die because he had struggles with substance abuse. He isn't dead because of the fact that he may have had previous run-ins with law enforcement. He's not dead because he had a challenging relationship with the mother of his child, or anybody for that matter. He is dead because a man with depraved indifference, with a smirk on his face, almost a gleeful attitude, snuffed out his life with his knee for over 9 minutes. And anything that detracts from that core point almost in many ways codifies this type of disregard for human life into the bloodstream. It's why, I've consistently, and that's a whole separate argument, but when people talk about white privilege, I say, look, I understand what you're trying to talk about, but for me, I really want people to wrap their mind against black devaluation, the devaluation of the other. Because when we can start having a conversation about the fact that black people have been devalued, that the other in America has been devalued, that the problem that we face in America from our inception is that you dug a hole, put us in the hole, and now refuse to either A, give us a ladder to get out of the hole, or B, join us in filling up that hole so we can stand on equal ground together. That's the challenge that we face right now. And all this other white noise that is out there distracts us from that ultimate objective. And in the case of George Floyd, distracts us from the fact that what happened to him shouldn't have happened to anyone. And if this fact pattern existed anywhere else, in the suburbs of New York City, in New Rochelle, in Hartford, in any of the places where the tax brackets are very high and the faces that roam the streets are very pale, Derek Chauvin would already be under the jail.
Robert Patillo, what say you? Well, let me jump back to you, Mark Fancher. Your thoughts?
Well, at times, and I mean this figuratively, not literally, want to just go up to black people across the country and just slap them in the face and say, "Wake up!" We are, we're overcome by the emotion of hearing these children, these precious children. We're overcome by the emotion of the killing and everything that surrounded it. But we need to really understand that this is par for the course for a system that is inherently corrupt, inherently evil, and we can't be surprised by that anymore. And it's just as if we were in a hot war where people are shooting at each other. If your comrade next to you falls, that rips out your heart, but you don't have time to sit there and to grieve at that moment. You got to keep firing. You got to keep fighting. And that's what we need to do. If by chance we get a good outcome in this trial, the kind of verdict that we want, we've got to understand that doesn't mean that the system has fixed itself, because there are going to be thousands of other incidents that we never hear about where unknown black men and black women and black children are victims of police violence and police misconduct, and they won't get justice because the system is not designed to do that. If we get justice in this case, it's only because the system understands what Dwight McKee has been saying all along, that if we don't, we're going to tear the country down. So we need to be looking beyond the borders of this country for people of goodwill who are prepared to help us to create a new political, social, and economic reality for ourselves. And when we're able to network with those kinds of people who stand in solidarity with us and who have the resources and access to opportunities that we need in order to create this new reality, it's then when we have some measure of power and influence that we're able to begin the kinds of discussions across racial lines that I think all of us really want. But right now, we're very vulnerable. We're in a very tenuous position, as we always have been and always will be, as long as the system of white supremacy that serves the interests of capitalism is in place and every day stalking us and looking for ways to wipe us out.
You know, we've been dealing with the morality of all of this, but I'm keenly aware that I'm not a lawyer. You are a lawyer. Robert Patillo's a lawyer. Attorney Fantry, you're a lawyer. You all are practicing attorneys. CK, given
Yes.
what we are seeing, given what we have, I mean, the testimonies yesterday were so compelling. We are seeing this tape, the moving pictures, if you will, the video of this man being killed from a lot of different vantage points. How is it that there can still be a discussion about a possible acquittal? And I'm mindful of the fact that it only takes one juror. What could possibly get him off?
Well, and CK personally, I don't see where there would be a shred of evidence that could get him off. But I'm not a juror. I'm not a juror there, and I'm trained as a lawyer. So what could get him off is simply one or two jurors feeling, yes, this is sad. Yes, George Floyd met an untimely death, and yes, the whole thing is bad. But I just don't think that Derek Chauvin had many other options. He was trained at using 4 or 5 techniques under these circumstances, and this is what was available to him. And unfortunately, he used the one because he felt that he needed to restrain this man who was big, who was daunting, and who, as it turns out, was on drugs. And he used it, and unfortunately, because of his pre-existing conditions, it just combusted and he died. And it's unfortunate, it's sad, but that's what happened. That is the rationale of somebody who would say, I just don't think we can convict him. It's sad. That's the rationale, if there's a rationale. And while we might think it's outrageous and crazy because you can just look at the video, that would be the rationale. But the thing that I really want everybody to understand is there are, and I don't see a second side to this, but there are always 2 sides to every story. And that other side, what the defense is going to present, all they have to do, and they're going to work on 1 or 2 jurors, leaders, based on their background, and they're watching their reactions to all things in the courtroom. They have minions and people who are watching every single reaction of those jurors. All they're going to do is play to the sensibilities of those couple jurors based on their background and what they know about them and their reactions in the courtroom, and talk to them so that they will be leaders in getting him acquitted or a hung jury. That's what's going to be there. And we're going to hear, and there are people who are going to, even in jury selection, they responded to the fact that they felt that George Floyd was a bad person. They're going to make him the demon seed. He's going to be everything bad. He's going to be a woman beater, a child abuser, everything bad that they can surmise he's going to be. Anything bad that he's ever done, they're going to put out there in evidence if the judge allows it, and it seems like this judge will probably allow it as a defense, because they're going to build that up to the man that presented in the state that he was in to the police, and the police had no choice. And even if it's unfortunate that he died, it's sad that he died, and this and that, he somehow, because of his behavior, caused the death. That's going to be the case that they presented. That his behavior is what triggered what happened, and that Derek Chauvin operated according to the police manual and what he's taught, and he did what a reasonable police officer would have done under those circumstances, and he had no choice. And remember, the conviction is going to be beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, see, that might be BS to me. That might be disgusting, reprehensible to me. It wouldn't sell me. It wouldn't do anything for me because I would be focused on the tape. But I'm not a juror in the case. And that's how these cases, or that's why we see a lot of acquittals. Because people aren't willing to send a police officer, some people, to jail when you have an unruly, big, King Kong-like, drug-ingested black man in America. And that's what it is.
But
it's just that simple.
He wasn't pulled over for drugs. He was pulled over because
because you're thinking rationally. I agree with you 1,000%. You're thinking rationally. You're thinking all of the things, but I don't even reach that.
Wait.
I just get to look at the video.
Let me just say, they tell us that's why they pulled him over. I have to tell you, everybody on this panel and everybody who's listening, I'm not so. There's something about this that there's something rotten and rotting in Denmark. I think to the high heaven. This is a guy.
There's nothing here that makes any
big
sense.
Black man who all the ladies in the club liked. This guy's on the outside looking in. Oh, Joseph, I feel a lot of other stuff going on here.
Yeah, but
okay, very quickly.
Yeah, but you have to go back. You have to go back to the premise of the country. The country is built. You have to go back to the premise of the country. The country is built on the premise that we are 3/5 of a human. And I always raise the question: if we're 3/5 of a human, what does the other 2/5 go? And the two others go to them. It's that. So what you're competing against is 3/5 of a human against 7/5 of a human. And so the mathematics are always going to be in their favor because the presumption is that they are more human than we are, that we are less than they are. And so we keep looking for motives. The issue is not the motives or the evidence. The issues are the premise. And that premise is we are less than and they are more than. And it's very hard to compete against that premise.
CK, you want to say something quickly, and then you, Joseph? CK?
Yeah, I'm just going to say something. I'm going to say something really quickly. I think as Joseph being on this call is proof positive. This is not a partisan issue. This is not a partisan issue. This is a human rights issue. Anyone looking at that video can see what they see. They know what they see. They just either refuse to agree to it because of their bias. They refuse to let their eyes be the final barometer of what they're seeing, or they just call it like they see it. That's what it is. And so those jurors, there probably are jurors who will refuse to accept what they're seeing, and they'll let all this other chatter insinuate itself into the final deliberation and determination. So with the prosecution, who's doing a very fine job, he's very, very well prepared, methodical, and all that, what the prosecution is going to have to do is get that out of their mind. Remind them of their duty at every turn. There's no room in this case for leaving. He has to leave no stones unturned with these jurors on this issue because he's coming in behind the 8 ball. He's coming in with some people saying, well, I just don't think police officers should be in jail with the population and they do good in society. And he was playing by the book and maybe there was some excessive use, but he didn't have many options. And George Floyd, after all, was threatening. And they all have ways, people have ways of viewing big black men. There are a lot of people that think they are threatening, even when they're docile and doing nothing. Just sitting down and walking into a restaurant, some people grab their purses and think that they are threatening. So when if you have somebody who believes that, and then they have evidence that they're hearing that this man was agitated and all that kind of stuff, for them it's a wrap. So the prosecution has his job cut out for him.
Oh, we heard that in a call yesterday. I'm going to get closing thoughts from everybody, but before we get closing thoughts, I want to hear what you were trying to interject and say, Joseph.
I just think that Black people in this country have been devalued. That is a fact. But it is not part of the fact pattern. And I think that when it's helpful that we have these conversations. But I think as it relates to the case, we just need to focus on the treachery that actually occurred. A man held his knee on another man's neck for over 9 minutes. And none of the people that were professionally empowered with the power to save that man's life did anything. That's the whole story here. Nothing else should matter, because it's not as if he was there for 2 minutes and then he had a medical emergency, or 3 minutes and had a medical emergency, or 4 minutes, or 5 minutes, or 6 minutes and had a medical emergency. For almost 10 minutes, he asphyxiated a man with his knee. If that happened in a home, if that happened anywhere in the world, we would understand that these actions on some basic level were so reckless that they produced and likely contributed to another human being no longer being here. We have sent people to jail for far less than that. So, as to say that, people feel as if they have no choice, the officer felt like he had no choice, well, maybe that's the case. But if the system comes back and says, yes, the officer had no choice, then there are going to be a lot of Americans waking up the day after that verdict is rendered saying that now you have left us with no choice, but to say that we are done with the system. And that comes from a lot of people across the board who understand intuitively the gravity of being in such a place, because if the system is gone, then so too soon will be the nation that we love.
I've got 30 seconds for everybody. 30 seconds, CK, you go.
We have to pray. We have to pray for this country. We have to listen to the evidence, and we have to pray that those jurors will vote their conscience, and that their conscience will tell them that they need to convict for the murder of George Floyd, period.
Attorney Robert Patillo. Of course, CK can be heard on WAOK every Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Attorney Robert Patillo, who is on WAOK every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. Robert?
It's critical for us to understand that the fact that we have to have this argument shows just how broken the system is in America. The fact that somebody can kill someone on video in front of, a half dozen or so witnesses, and the entire nation see it, and we still have to be on pins and needles about if they're going to be convicted. If you can't get a conviction in this case, then what exact case would you need? What set of facts would you need in order to convict an officer for killing a black man in this country? So beyond the instant case of George Floyd, we have to look at how we reform our laws, how we reform our public policy to ensure that this isn't needed the next time, and hopefully prevent it from being a next time.
Attorney Mark Fancher.
Well, as evil as white supremacy is, God has placed in the hearts and minds of every person a conscience that is very strong. And in order to deal with it, white supremacy has concocted a complex series of myths, lies, and stereotypes. And in this case, the stereotype about this big black hulking brute is what is going to help people to do what they traditionally have done under white supremacy, and that is create yet another injustice. So if the prosecutor is smart, that what he will do is to ensure that this case is filled with proof of George Floyd's humanity and put it in the jurors' faces so that conscience overwhelms white supremacist tendencies.
Dwight McKee, 30 seconds.
We have been valued. We've been evaluated at 3/5 of a human being. And the Supreme Court said we have no more rights than a chicken or a duck or a cow. Had this been a dog being choked like that in the streets, PETA would have turned the city out, because they see in many of their lives that dogs have more value than some black people. We have a systemic issue in here, in this country, which is one race believes that they are the superior race, and anybody else who are not them are an inferior race. And until we get past that, we will keep having this issue. over and over and over again.
Joseph Pinion, consider yourself to be part of this panel now. Republican strategist, the chair of the Conservative Color Coalition, and the host of your own show on Newsmax. Newsmax, congratulations to you. The Saturday Agenda at 1 Eastern Standard Time. The last 30 seconds belong to you.
Either we're a nation that believes in liberty or we don't. And if the consensus is that George Floyd was not deprived of liberty, the conclusion must only be that he was never entitled to it in the first place. And so to my colleague's point, yes, we were once deemed 3/5 of a human being. We're now supposed to be fully vested members of society. But if we can lose our life over a matter stemming from a fake $20 bill, then clearly the message has been sent loud and clear to anyone and everyone who has wanted to stand up for the premise we have made, that the progress is a mirage. And the reality
15
is that the system is truly not going to work for us anymore.
Well, you know, one of the great icons of our church, Reverend Dr. Johnny Cody, said it works when you work it. We have to get involved, everybody. Register, vote, be a part of these juries, and get involved. Voting is the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end. And in order for this society, this constitutional republic to work, you have to get involved. We might have started off 3/5 human. That was some man's idea. But God knows exactly who we are, who we all are. So get involved, everybody. And may God bless all of us. And all of us, let us bless God and be good people. I'm Santita Jackson. I can't wait to be with you tomorrow. God bless you. You all were a wonderful panel today. If anyone wants to say anything else to my Facebook Live crew, you can. But I think you all left nothing else on the table. Oh, my gosh.
Thank you so much. Truly, well, yeah, you have to let me know we can get a copy of this wonderful conversation. So
you know what? It comes up. I will send you the link because it comes up on WCPT in about an hour. WCPT820.com. I'll send you the link. Absolutely. But I'm so glad that you were part of it because it is not a partisan conversation. And you know what? When it does take a partisan turn, I think what we have got to do, and I think we're mature enough to do this, we've got to continue to keep the lines of communication open. Because, you know, I've been at Fox and you understand arguing in those spaces, they're going to tell you, Robert Patillo, who understands these spaces, because that's where he can be too, and C.K. Hoffler and Dwight McKee and Mark Fancher. They start off.
No, I don't think they would have me.
Well, no. Because see, you fool them. They see you. He looks so calm. He's so educated. He's so well spoken. And then you open your mouth, and that becomes a problem. But that's okay. They might not invite you back, but it's important. But it's important to because they do start, and a lot of people start with all that George Floyd is not. And I'm like, wait a minute. You know, hold on, wait a minute. And these people, these same people, no names, who make these arguments are unconvicted felons themselves. They are doing all kinds of things that could put them in a tabloid, but they're protected. And people just need to quit with the hypocrisy. Joseph, Mark, Dwight, CK. Come on, Robert. Enough already. I can't believe my lying eyes. Oh my gosh.
it is just crazy. It's just every I was good friends with the Bishop Omar Jawar of Dallas, passed away of COVID a couple weeks ago. But he would always used to tell us, he's like, there comes in life when the change is no longer coming. Right? When change is actually here, the life we have, the befores and the after, and at some point you're no longer living in the before. And I think that this trial is perhaps that moment for this nation in ways that perhaps none of the other cases could have been. The Trayvon Martin cases, the Tamir Elijah Rice cases, because this is just so callous. It's almost as if it's worse than if he had strangled the man with his bare hands, because I mean, just the type of, I mean, he almost could have been sitting there whistling Dixie while this man effectively lost his life. So it's
Literally.
people want to sit here and say that Derek Chauvin is, he can be acquitted, and they think that the world is going to function. This nation is going to explode. I don't think. I think we could see things worse than what we saw in the aftermath of the assassination of Dr. King. If there's no justice for George Floyd in this nation, we haven't begun to see civil unrest. The ways in which it will be fully manifest if this man is acquitted.
Well, Dwight's saying the same thing. Dwight?
That's what I've been saying, is that they think that this thing is going to be like everything else. No, doctor, the walls will come tumbling down if this guy walks away as not convicted of anything. This is, as James Bond said, this is a blueprint.
Well, explain to me why. Why now?
Why not? Because for the same reasons for the reasons that Joseph just said, is that this is so fundamental. This is right in your face. This is arrogance like even that we've never seen on videotape, where this guy sing on his neck and all but whistling Dixie as he stuffed his man's up. We've never seen this. We've heard about the lynching and we've heard about Tulsa, but we have never seen anything like this before, where a policeman sit with that kind of arrogance and stuff a man's life out with the attitude of, I dare you to do anything about it. And so people who really believe that there is a system that can be dealt with will come to the conclusion that no, there is nothing that can be done that can protect us, so we must protect ourselves. And they will push the walls of the temple down and kill us and the people in the temple, because they see no other alternatives and no other options than this.
I was going to suggest this, and then I'm going to have to sign off. I can't guarantee it, but I don't foresee, from our perspective, a bad verdict or ultimate outcome in this case for this reason. If I think that the system knows everything that Dwight just explained, they're fully aware of it, and there's too much money at stake, too much capital at stake to risk that. And if the jury comes back with the wrong verdict, I think the judge will set it aside. He will find some basis for concluding that the verdict is inconsistent with the evidentiary record, and it will be set aside. But I don't see a bad outcome here from our perspective, because there's just too much at stake. But at the same time, I don't think, I'm hopeful, and it may be a vain hope, that we will not be lulled into a sense of satisfaction and passivity because of that outcome. We have to understand just how lethal the system really still is, and how toxic it is for us, and how we can't become a part of this. I do not buy into the idea that this country can be made right given the existing structure. It just cannot. It is inherently flawed, and we need to continue to strategize about ways of dismantling it.
Anybody else have a response? Joseph, Dwight, CK, Robert?
I don't know if I go that far. I believe in the human spirit, and I believe that there are more people who want to do the right thing than people who want to do the wrong thing. And I think that, the issue with George Floyd is American just reality television 101, going back to dogs and fire hoses. It's in your face. It's undeniable. You can't be a person of conscience who looks at that video and says that the outcome here should be an acquittal. That's just not the case. And so I do believe that life does have these before and after moments, that anything that is worth anything, it requires a struggle. but I'd be remiss, even in this moment, not being able to understand the progress that's been made. And for me, my challenge to my brothers and sisters is to make sure that we understand that there has to be internal and external pressure to change the system. There was always been strife within the movement, that we had the Southern Christian Leadership Committee, but we also had the Black Panther movement. We also had SNCC. We had different facets of a movement for justice and equality that all had different ideas about how that equality could and should be achieved. But all of them are valuable and all of them are necessary. And I think that if there is a confluence of those movements that decide that trying to heal the world and work in the tradition of Christ is no longer suitable, then that's not a victory over America. That is a failure in the name of our faith and our love and our compassion.
Well, let me agree with you, because I agree completely that there are more people who want to do the right thing, and I agree with everything you said. The only place where I think we differ is in the belief that we can achieve the aspirations of people of goodwill using the system that we have. For me, it is just like, us getting into an automobile and saying that it would be great if this car would fly. And as hard as we might try to make that car fly, we won't be able to do it because it's not designed to do that. This system is not designed to give us the kind of world that I think we all aspire to. It's not designed to give us a world that Jesus would like. In fact, Jesus was in this situation when he was on this earth. He functioned in occupied Palestine under a system of imperialism, and he did not see that that system had any value whatsoever. He rejected it outright. And I think we need to do the same thing with respect to the system that we live in. It cannot be reformed. It cannot be made into what we want it to be. And we need to build something totally different, drawing upon the best of what all humanity has to offer, and coming together as a community that does aspire to be the best that human beings can be.
Yeah, Mark is right. Mark could never have a radio show. He's right about that.
Look, let me tell you. And you know what? Joseph has his television show, and I'm going to keep my radio show. But y'all go on to all these radicals, the red, black, and green dashikis. Just go on with that. I hear you.
Well, I'm going to hang up so that they don't throw you off the air.
No. Let me tell you something. Before you go, I have people who I think are responsible, who have information, and who will introduce. This is a comfortable place to have uncomfortable conversations. I will hold to that. All I ask is that we be respectful of each other, even if we disagree, and even if we get a little testy. I don't want us to become nasty with each other. You will always have space here, always. And a lot of people listening to these conversations we have here, and we're bringing thoughts and ideas to people who've never heard them. And that's why I'm so pleased that Joseph joined us, and I'm glad that you will be a part of us going forward, because it's important for us. And even if when you come on and you're going to be 180 degrees from most, if not everybody here, that's fine. But we've got to find a way to work with each other, because Dwight made the point yesterday. You've got a young lost child who's a very popular artist, who is playing with Satan and put blood in his sneakers that were sold out. There is moral rot here, and we've got to deal with that. There's some deeper issues here. Say if we get a good outcome, the system is still in peril. So, I'm feeling you, and I know. I want you to continue to support your family, Mark. And you've got that great job, so go on and go to it. Because I know you got to do that.
Yes, I do. Okay.
Love you.
But thank you all. We'll talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you in the morning. No,
All right.
don't worry. No, we got to continue to do this.
Okay.
Well, there's so much going on. And,
All right, guys. Love you.
I love you. I love you. Robert, I love you. I'll see you this afternoon. Dwight McKee, Joseph, do you all want to say anything before we go? or CK?
I got to run myself, but it was a pleasure, and we'll have to do this more often.
Oh,
Nice to meet you, Joseph.
you're gonna hear from me, Joseph, like in days. I'm closing in on Good Friday, so
100%.
I'm trying to work into that because even with the trial, I gotta talk about Jesus on Friday. How about that? So, CK, are you still there? Anybody? I don't want to miss anybody, but I'm going to let everybody go. But I love you all so much. Dwight, do you have a final thought?
No. It's nice to meet Joseph. Good show today.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, you all make everything good. And I want to thank everybody. Josette, how you doing? And Bab and Daryl and Lorraine and Medi, who gets up with me in the morning along with Lorraine and Marnie and Chapearl. And they get up so we can get the sound check going. But all of you get up with us, and I want to thank you for that. And Kenneth, how you doing? Vicky, all of you, thank you so much. You know, you've just given me so much joy. I feel so blessed to have been able to be with you, particularly at such in such challenging times, because you've helped renew a sense of purpose in my own life, and I want to thank you for allowing me to step into your lives just for a few minutes every day, and thank you for being part of mine. You mean the world to me. I hope you know that I just love you all. I really, really do. You're part of my heart now. And I thank God for all of you. I thank God for all of you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Love you so much. Love you, Dwight. Love you, Joseph. Love you, CK. Love you, Robert. Love you, Mark. Love you, uh, Dr. Vicky, Reverend Dr. Vicky Johnson. Love you. Love you. Love you. Love you, Maine. Love all of you. Love all of you. Thank you so much, Paul, for a great show. God bless you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Be blessed. Bye bye.